Hey everyone, it's Pat and Phillip here this time for a quick talking point. How you doing, Phillip?
I'm good. How about you?
I'm doing very well. It has been quite a while since we've had a very long talk on one of these, even though we just did a really quick one last month.
Yeah, that was our Cobra Convergence video, and yeah, we both wanted to get in on that one.
Yeah. So I thought this month it would be a good time to talk about Serpentor, since everybody's talking about Serpentor with the Classified Series figure just revealed. But you and I have kind of talked over the years about some really interesting early details about Serpentor that kind of leave us in a mystery, and I thought that it may just be fun to shine a light on a mystery today, even though we don't really have the exact answers.
Right. Yeah, sometimes just speculating is enough to get those gears turning and get people in the know to maybe pitch in or, set off a little light bulb and say, hey, wait a minute, what if we went down this rabbit hole?
Yeah, and I think that we can kind of kick that off just by looking at the commercial first. Let's take a look at that.
Fearing Cobra Commander no longer has the ability to lead, Destro and Dr. Mindbender comb the tombs of the most evil leaders in history, and from their genetic tissues produce a composite clone, the ultimate Cobra Emperor, Serpentor.
So there was something pretty big about Serpentor in that animation that was quite different. Am I wrong?
No, he was the wrong color.
Yeah, and I can't believe that this isn't something that people are talking about all the time. Because you figure you have the Crimson Guard are a major part of Cobra, and red kind of is associated with being regal, and it's Serpentor, the Emperor. I mean, he's dressed in gold the way that he was released, which is plenty regal, but I don't know. I think that the red Serpentor definitely has an interesting place in G.I. Joe history.
Yeah, well, I mean, you think about it, how many gold snakes do you know about versus how many red snakes do you know about? Gold, not so much a snake color. Yellow, yeah. Orange, sure. But red seems like more a snake color, and also red sigil on cobras. So it seemed like a more obvious choice to go with.
Yeah, and when you look back at various Serpentor figures, there haven't been a lot of repaints. So in my mind, this red Serpentor is an obvious contender for Hasbro to do something with at some point in the future, but it feels just very tucked away. Here it is in the commercials, but as you and I were talking about this, it didn't appear only in the commercials. Isn't that right?
Yeah, no, he kind of snuck in a few other places as well.
Yeah, I know that, like, as I was looking just to kind of prepare for this, I just picked a couple of episodes, because I remembered seeing him in the episodes as I was rewatching them on DVD, and in Cobrathon, he can be seen, I believe, on a monitor.
Yeah, and very obviously that same sort of burnt umber red shade. Interestingly enough, bare arms, kind of harkening back to Serpentor's first appearance in the Marvel Comics, where he, got a cape over nothing. So,
yeah, but these are kind of interesting because, yeah, the arms probably were an animation error, but it looks like whenever Serpentor is kind of in the background or in brief clips, that some of the animation maybe was not corrected. I mean, we're just kind of theorizing here that there was the possibility that at some point Serpentor was going to be a red action figure, and so they made the animation to match, and as they were going back through correcting the animation for the episodes, that maybe some of the shots didn't get corrected, because here's another one in the $1 Million Medic, where he's, having a discussion with Tomax and Zaymont, and he's yellow Serpentor, but then as he leaves, from behind you could see that it's red Serpentor again.
Yeah, and of course we're just speculating on the color scheme here being an early toy design because it does show up so frequently. And also, jumping over to the sister line of Transformers, we know oftentimes prototypes from Japan with those Diaclone or Microchange lines had color schemes that weren't brought over here, but did sometimes show up in animation as they were being referenced early on.
I kind of expected to see something in Arise Serpentor Arise, and as far as Red Serpentor goes, it just wasn't there. It was in some later episodes, which maybe for budgetary reasons it wouldn't have been changed, but it definitely feels like there was something to do with a red Serpentor earlier on. And years ago, I was browsing eBay, as I do, and I found a figure from a seller who quite often had some prototype stuff, and there was a weird Serpentor in there. And I thought, wow, that's strange. And it was loose, and I thought, you know what, I can't afford to bid on this auction right now. I'm going to leave it go. And years later, I ended up regretting it. Because it looked to me like maybe it was just a figure somebody had slathered some paint on. But years later, I got lucky, and there was one that showed up in the package. And so I have that here today for us to take a look at. This is what I'm calling Copper Serpentor. So essentially, it's a lot like Serpentor that was released, and for those who are aware of the variation, there's a variation on Serpentor where his neck is either unpainted, and so it's flesh tone, or it is painted yellow so that it kind of matches his mask and the coils going down his chest. But the weird thing about this one is that it has a wash all over it. It's definitely paint on there. It's a very weird figure. And what are your thoughts on this?
You know, it almost looks kind of dirty. Maybe that's why they decided to drop that paint app from later on.
Yeah.
It's like, you know, it's obviously sealed in this little card, so no dust has gotten in, but it looks really dusty.
Yeah, it does look dirty, and that's kind of why I was like, should I buy that thing or shouldn't I? Whenever I saw one loose initially. But then when it shows up on the card, it's like, no, this isn't, you know, just somebody slathering some paint on Serpentor. This is definitely an earlier Serpentor that has a copper or bronze wash to him. And there is part of me that wonders if maybe somewhere in the mess of paperwork and translation, if somewhere it was referred to as red gold. Because gold, whenever it's called red gold, that actually means that it has some other metals in there, and those other metals are usually copper, that it would be referred to as red gold. So this looks like it's kind of a copper wash on Serpentor, so I like to think that maybe somewhere out there is definitive plans and that Serpentor was almost going to be red, but I can't rule out the possibility that somewhere they just said red gold on a piece of paper because it was going to be a copper look to it, and maybe that's why the animation is as it is.
Right, because it's not a pure red, it's really a reddish orange.
Yeah. And the other thing that's weird about the original Serpentor commercial that also lends to this thing is that, you know, for years we were looking at low-resolution copies of the commercial online, just whatever we could get, whatever was transferred to digital from people's home copies, and you know, there was a lot of generational loss in there as well. But this high-res copy of the commercial that has been posted on YouTube more recently, if you pause it, you can actually see that as Serpentor is swooping in on the chariot, that it's actually this version of the figure, that it's a finished figure that has a copper wash on it. So it's kind of interesting that ended up in there. Because I was also looking for hints inside the Toy Fair catalogs. There were two catalogs Hasbro put out in 1986. There was like an early catalog that I call the Spring catalog. It doesn't actually say Spring on it. And then the Hasbro official Toy Fair catalog. The Spring catalog is weird because it doesn't have a wash on it in that. And then in the catalog for Toy Fair that I believe came later, the wash does look like it is there. So it's kind of strange, and you can tell that without the wash, it's an earlier Air Chariot as well, because the stickers are not finalized. So I don't know what's going on here. It's a little bit of a mystery, and that's kind of what I wanted to present today.
It is always fun to look into how these things iterate across plans before they actually make it to market, and how those last-minute changes can really affect cascadingly across all sorts of media.
Yeah, you were actually pointing out something about the Deke Serpentor right before we started recording.
Yes, so Serpentor shows up in Operation Dragonfire, the first miniseries and the first animation put out by Deke. And in that, he has a very noticeable red cape. to him, which, you're probably wondering, where did this red cape come from? Where do they pull this from? And this actually applies to all the grandfathered character models for Deke from what would be prior to the toy releases. These came from Marvel Comics, actually. I'm just spitballing here that somebody at Deke got a hold of either the Order of Battle miniseries or the trade paperback, because the character models line up pretty perfectly. Anytime you see, like, Zorana with green, you look at the character model in the Order of Battle, and that matches. So that shows us that was their inspiration. And so Marvel Comics gave him red cape, which I can only assume is also because they had an early color iteration.
Yeah, that makes sense. So they probably had some red on him that they were shown early on, and they put it on the thing that ended up into the Order of Battle, and then Deke borrowed that and put it in their episode. Do I have that right?
That's the speculation, though I should point out he doesn't always have a red cape in the Marvel Comics issues, so who knows where that red came from, but it is interesting that it's that same sort of color issue popping up again.
Yeah, and a lot of the Order of Battle stuff is based on, you can tell that it's based on presentation art or color studies, like the art done at Hasbro whenever we've seen pre-production stuff. So that kind of holds up. And speaking of last-minute changes, while we're just on the topic of Serpentor, this is another weird one. I don't know how many people have seen this. I think a lot of people have seen this, but it's worth bringing up in an episode about Serpentor. Green hair Serpentor from the comic pack.
Yeah, it's around 2005-ish.
His armor on his upper legs is only half painted, and his hair is left green, which is the base color of the plastic, instead of being painted black like it was on the finished figure. And I'm sure that this is probably just the result of communication not being clear with the factory on what was wanted. So that's most definitely why this ended up as it was.
Yeah, I have a hard time thinking Hasbro was going to give Serpentor green hair in this release.
It's all very interesting. I think that Serpentor is an exciting topic, and I really would love to see Hasbro give him a little more attention. If the O-Ring line were to do Serpentor again, I would love to see some additional colors, and I think that about does it for anything I have to say. Do you have anything else to add today?
So as we were talking, I was looking through some of the reference material I have saved on Serpentor, and I came across this trading card from Comic Images. And Comic Images uses artwork from Marvel Comics. They didn't come up with their own designs. They just kind of took existing art and then added a border to it. And there's a card for Serpentor in here. And guess what color he is?
He is kind of that coppery red, isn't he?
Yeah, he's that burnt umber. So it does filter out in the strangest of places where you're not expecting.
Yeah, that's an interesting one, though. If you actually look at the Impel card, though, too, the Honor Roll card, it kind of looks like it's based on the other card to me, because his hand is in that same position, but, you know, his body is shifted a bit, and the color of his armor is like a burnt umber again. It's not specifically what I would call gold, and his cape is red. So it is kind of like maybe this is what they really were going for initially. Maybe they wanted that very metallic, shiny look to him. I don't know. I think Serpentor came out great with the gold look.
And, you know, I can only imagine how much more fragile Serpentor would be if they had gone with a full-on reddish gold, because he's fragile enough as he is.
Yeah, that's for sure. Definitely got some gold plastic syndrome. And you sent me one more thing where he actually looks like this is one worth a mention, for sure.
Yeah, this is The Sultan's Secret. It's one of the novels that came out, and got some cover art by the late, great Earl Norham.
I really love the Earl Norham art.
Look at that. Red cape, bare arms.
Bare arms. Yeah, so maybe the bare arms were not an animation error. I really don't know what's going on here. It's definitely, we've got several layers to the Serpentor mystery, but a couple of cool pre-production figures that we got to look at today, and yeah, I don't know what to make of this. I really would love to hear if anybody has more sightings of Red Serpentor, like if we could just compile a list write in the comments of all of the sightings of Red Serpentor, because I'm sure there are more of them, especially in the Sunbow cartoon, because I just picked 2 episodes where I thought that he would be, and indeed he was in there in red, so there has to be more.
I don't doubt it.
All right, well, I think that does it for today. If you enjoyed this episode, I would say please, but instead I will say, like, share, and subscribe. This I command.
Oh.
All right, thanks again.
See ya.
Thanks for watching this episode of Articulated Points. We hope you enjoyed it, and we'd appreciate it if you would like, share, and subscribe. If you'd like to learn more about some of the toys featured in this episode or want to follow us on social media, links are in the description below this video.